Hi everyone, it's Elise from Kit and Clouder Colouring Classes, and today I'm going to be showing you how to colour simple metal objects to achieve a shiny effect. Now this technique can be adapted to any metal or high shine object in any image that you want to colour up. You'll find all the information on the colours I'm using in the description below the video. Now this technique is a preview from our brand new Adventure Awaits colouring class, which is our March 2021 Beginners Colouring Project over at kitandclouder.com. If you are already a class member, breaking down your classes into smaller goals or objects like this can be a really great way to start if you're nervous or only have a limited amount of time. 10 minutes of colouring is all you need to make a start and to take a mindful break for you to recharge, de-stress, and also grow in your hobby. So let's go ahead and jump in. Now when colouring any object, it's important to first keep in mind light source. Light source is anything that makes light in our scenes and must be present for an object to be seen. It's what determines the light and shade of an object. So typically in our classes, we work with ambient lighting. So that's a major source of light in a scene, like the sun or overhead lighting. They're things that cast big cones of light over your entire project. So when working with ambient lighting, the light hits parts of the object that are raised up toward us, no matter what side the object or light is on, and the areas that are further back end up more in shadow. So if I were to say, look at my little bear's head here, a good way to think about this is his head is like a sphere. So the middle part of the head is popping out toward us. It's the high point, and that ends up being the lightest because our light rays come down and hit that high point first. The sides curve away to create that rounded shape, and as they curve, they're curving away from the light, so end up darker. So notice around the edges here how it's actually darker color. This helps to show that rounded effect, and it's that form shadow as the object curves around. And the middle, again, being lighter because it's popping out. Now when it comes to shiny objects, it's a little bit different. You'll notice on the lamp here, I actually have two highlights, one down each side. So when we show shiny objects, we want to start also thinking about how the light reflects off the surface. Now when you have light reflection, that will typically occur where the object changes direction. So things like curving around those sides, or if you have one coming one way and then it changes and goes the other way. These form different directions and your light hits those points and reflects back, creating that shiny surface. So if we think of our lamp here as being rounded, just like the bear's head, what we want to remember is the middle, even though that's popping out toward us, that ends up actually looking flat. It's the two sides as it starts to curve around where we actually get that light hitting and bouncing back off. So that's why we have two highlights to help show that it is a shiny surface versus a more matte surface like our bear's head. Now, one other thing I just want to cover very quickly before we jump in is cast shadows. So whenever we're coloring, we also want to think about if any objects are overlapping, and I'll just show you this quickly here. If I have an object in front or above another object, it casts a shadow onto the object below or behind, and it's showing me those levels between the objects. This is really important. I find the thing that people ask me the most is how to create depth in their projects, and this is the one thing people don't do because they haven't been taught it. We don't just know to add in a cast shadow. So where we can see this on our project now, see the level difference between the cap of the lamp and the actual lamp itself. It really looks like that is sitting on top. And the reason for that is because we've got a nice thick cast shadow directly beneath that cap. So again, if you ever get confused, just place a marker or something over your hand to remind yourself that the object above is casting the shadow on the object behind. Shadow always on that behind object. And it will create the levels and distance between your objects. Now I'm just going to show you how to color this up. So I'm going to move this off to the side, and I've got a nice blue blend that I'm going to be using for my lamp here today. So I'm going to be using B32, 34 and 37. However, just before I start, I'm going to grab RV55 and I'm just going to really quickly add in the little gems along the top here so I don't accidentally color over them. Come along the top part here. Now my colouring here is quite small. It does take a little bit of practice to do fine lines, but the only way to improve at them is to practice them. If you'd like some tips on how to practice with your markers to do your basic blending, we have a free marker series called Markers 101 that'll go through all the blending strokes. But I'm just going to show you how to jump in here today straight with those techniques. So I'm going to start with my darkest colour, B37, and I'm going to look for those cast shadows that we talked about. So remember, the cap here is sitting over the lamp, so I can come straight in and apply a thick line underneath. Now that doesn't need to be fine. If you struggle with fine lines, try moving the paper around. It's easier if the bulk of your marker falls away from where you're colouring up to. So you can see here I can colour toward that line, and it will just make it a little bit easier because my marker is falling toward the bottom. Try and work on the tip of the marker. That'll help you just to achieve that final point. And you can move your page all around, whatever suits you best. So we're just gliding over the surface of the paper here now. I'm coming up the very edge of the lamp. Now this is that form shadow that we talked about earlier. Remember, the lamp is rounded, so as it gets to that furthest point rounding around, we add the form shadow in to help it have that rounded nature. And I'm going to do the same on the other side here as well, coming underneath that little stem on the lamp. And you can even do the same along the top of the lamp there. Think of this little part. This can be a sphere, but this is like a little cylinder. So when you have a cylinder, the middle part pops out towards you, the sides curve away. Now it's a really good thing whenever you color any object, think about those geometric shapes. When you're coloring arms and legs on your characters, it's the same thing. They're cylinders, so the middle of your arm and leg is the lightest, the sides darkest because it's curving away. Now we can add a little bit of a cast shadow just underneath our gemstone here because that's in front. I want to make sure that that looks like it's popping out from the face of the lamp. And then straight through the middle, I'm just going to add a little bit of shading to show where it's plateauing out and looking flat to our eye. So that's helping to create that shine effect because all of a sudden we've already got our two highlights there. Now as I come to the top of the lamp, I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm adding color around the sides, showing where the very edges are curving away from the light. Now these don't need to be super fine, so you can always add thickness here. And then I'm going to come straight through the middle and I'm going to try and match that up with the same trajectory as the line at the bottom. Alright, now I'm just going to blend that out. So B34 is next. I'm going to come straight over the top of that last color and I'm just dabbing, extending further out toward the highlights on each side. Now this is such a small object, so I don't need to worry so much about the blend being smooth. However, you can see I'm doing multiple strokes back and forward over where that last color has ended. So I'm trying to soften the line between the colors. So I'm basically adding more alcohol to dilute down that dark alcohol that's on the page so we can get our blend happening here. Come into the top and it's the same thing. Come around those little gemstones if you can. When you're doing finer detail like this, if you find you accidentally color over it, having a white gel or paint pen handy can really help because you could even go over those gel pens just with a white and it will make them look like they're shiny again as well. Now the next color is B32. This is the lightest color in my blend now, and I'm going to fade in toward the highlight on either side. Now when you're coloring shiny objects, it's important to leave a little bit of light. High shine will always have high contrast between bright white highlights and deep dark shadows. So we always want to make sure our blend gets really light and white in the highlight areas and really deep and dark in the shadows. That's going to make it look even shinier for you. It's the way that our minds interpret what is a shiny object. It's that stark and sharp contrast between those colors. I'm just going to do the little handle here. Now, when you're doing such a small thing like this, a little tip and trick for you if you're still getting comfy with fine lines. Rather than trying to stay within the line, what you can do is you can color on the other side of the line. So I can come along the outside here of that line. No one's going to be able to tell. So all of a sudden I've got my thicker line there, and I've still got the entire object that I can blend out into. So there's always little tricks to help you master your fine lines, but you have to practice them for it to get easier. Next up is B34, and I'm just blending in toward that middle. If you lose the highlight here, it is absolutely okay. Just do your best. Little things like this don't make or break an object or a coloring by the end. It's just one thing that you may notice, and it's something that you can just work toward. Remember how I mentioned that white gel pen earlier? That can be really helpful to come back in and add more of your highlight that really pops out as well. And then I finish with a little bit of B32. Now what I'm doing is I'm coming up the other side of that outline, and you can see I've left that little bit of white there. So just by thinking about the position of where my markers are going to go, I can have a little bit more control to make that easier for me. Now when I do my coloring, what you want to think about the way that you've done your blending. You're basically diluting down each color with a lighter shade of the alcohol. So what happens is when you do coloring, sometimes those darker colors can end up a little bit desaturated or lighter. So we can combat that by repeating the blend again. So I just pop back in with B37, and I'm literally just repeating everything. This isn't as important with smaller objects like this, but you'll notice it a lot on your larger objects. And it may be a little bit harder to get it smooth. The second time around, your colors will always look a bit richer and be a little bit easier to blend, whilst holding a little bit more stronger pigment as well for you. And blend that out just like you did previously, so B34. So you can always decide whether you want to actually come through and do the second round. I personally usually do. I find it just makes it so much richer. Especially when you're working on shiny objects like this, the whole point is that contrast of color. And notice, see how I'm leaving still large amounts for my highlight areas. I want to make sure I can really see them, and that you should have that little bit of white left over at the end. This is B32. I'm just blending out toward that highlight and leaving that little pop of white so we can get that shine. Now again, if you lose it, you can always pop in with a white gel pen, or another little tip is to use a white pencil. I would recommend to grab a white pencil, have it in your stash. I like to use the Prismacolor pencils, because what you can do is even come over little parts of your highlight here, and it will just appear a little bit brighter against the marker. So it's just a little extra tip that can help you. I do like using pencil more than gel pen, because it will be a little softer in the end result. Now before I finish up, I am going to go ahead and show you how to color that little gem. It is very small, so we aren't able to fit in a lot of detail as if it was a close-up. But what I can do here is I start with a little bit of RV00, and I'm going to aim to add in that diamond shape straight through the middle, but I'm leaving a gap the whole way around it. Might be a little bit hard to see just for the moment, but then I grab my RV55, coming around from the top and bottom a little line, and blending back on the two diagonal sides. And then on the remaining sides, I've grabbed RV63, and I'm just going to draw in the line. Now that's quite fine. Again, when you do your fine lines, it takes practice, but you can use a pencil or even a fine liner to help you with getting those fine lines down pat. I hope you've enjoyed this quick lesson on how to color up shiny metal objects. You can try this technique on any image at all and with any color blend as well. So keep in mind today I didn't use the typical grays or silvers that I would use on a metal project. If you are wanting to do it in your grays, I personally prefer using cool gray colors because typically your aluminium or metals have that blue cast or tone to them, and that's your cool gray colors. Remember, colouring takes time and practice to learn, so your results may not instantly be the same as mine or others, but the more you practice, the easier it gets. If you'd like to colour the rest of this image with me, please head to kitandclouder.com to view our new Adventure Awaits colouring class. It's for sale until April 14th, and you'll receive lifetime access to do this class at your own pace. We'll be breaking down all the very basics in this class just like I've done here today on this video, so it's a great one for beginners to go through each little technique to help build up your skills. There's no time frames or lock-in contracts with our classes as well. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson and look forward to colouring with you next time.